How can family traditions benefit our children? That's the topic we're going to address today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager, and today I have a longtime friend and an amazing author, speaker, coach, and radio show host. Her name is Cynthia L. Simmons, and she celebrates women in history while guiding today's women to live in an upside-down world. Plus, she offers Heart of the Matter Radio, and that's a podcast as well. And she frequently airs videos of historical stories with a spiritual emphasis. Welcome, Cynthia. I am so happy that we get to have this conversation on Flourish-Meant today.
And I am so happy to be with you because you're such a special person.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. Can you dive in now into why you feel so passionate about family traditions?
Well, family traditions are kind of like an anchor in your kid's life. They give them something to look forward to and to feel like this is what our family does. And then it also kind of helps them as they walk through the seasons to kind of know what to expect and look forward to. We had lots of traditions, and we made a rule finally after a while that if we did it once, it wasn't a tradition, but if we did it twice, it could become a tradition because our kids would go, "You didn't do it that way last time. You broke our tradition." So it became a lot of fun as we established traditions.
Now, how do you recommend starting a family tradition? Should you do it early in childhood or wait until children are older so that they can have some kind of say in the process of what you're doing?
That's interesting. I had not thought about having your kids have a say in it. We started doing things a certain way, and as the kids got older, we would announce that this is the way we did things. This was our family tradition. And then they began to like that, and they would say, well, this needs to be a tradition. So they did have a say in it, but that's why we were saying, wait a minute, we only did it once. So if we do it twice, then it can become a tradition. But we wanted them to be kind of have something that we could say, this is what the Simmons do. This is how we do things.
Now, let's talk about the difference between old family traditions, the ones that are passed down from generation to generation, and the new ones, like you were talking about, that you develop with your own children in your nuclear family, and they've never been done by people in your ancestry before. Since you're a historical person, I kind of want to talk about those old family traditions and what some examples of those might be and how those actually benefit our children.
Well, things like my grandmother used to say that you could tell when an older person was getting ready to go to bed because they would start winding their clock. They didn't have electricity, so they had to make sure their clock was going to be working. And when you have one of those old wind-up clocks, you should only wind it up about once a day because that gets it on a cycle as well. So that's one thing that she always, in her mind, that meant it was time to go to bed because her mother was winding up her clock. So that's a tradition that she saw in her family. And, they used to have traditions in regard to how they mourned a relative. They would drape their windows, drape their mirrors so that they wouldn't see a shadow and things like that. That got to be maybe a little bit too heavy, but it does give people a chance to mourn if you have some outward symbol of mourning so that people understand and treat you a little differently. But those are some examples of old traditions.
And with historical family traditions, can that give your children a sense of connection to their ethnicity, their ancestry? Say your family came over to the Americas from Ireland or Jamaica or China. Would those types of family traditions anchor your child in a sense of belonging to a larger family history in their ethnicity? And can you give some examples of those in the United States?
Well, I came from probably England and Wales and Germany, so I was mostly Western European. But one thing that I have done is my mother had certain foods that she cooked for the holidays. And while we may do other things, I try to at least include a few of those that links us back to her. Because as you pick up that oatmeal cookie, that was her recipe, you remember my mother. So that's how I've kind of tried to link our families together. And another thing is having the kids look at picture albums with me. And I would tell my grandmother, well, this was my mother and this was her mother. That all those things kind of helps the kids get a sense of place and time.
So for new family traditions, this may be important if you face a trauma in your family where you've had a loss or something awful has happened and you don't want to do the family traditions exactly the same way. You'll have to establish new things. Can this be of benefit to your family moving forward if you create new family traditions with the people who are in your family now?
Well, that happened to us at one point in time, is that we had some trauma. And so we changed the way we did Christmas for a little while. And we said, we're just going to do it for this year. This is just a break from our traditions. And it really did kind of help us to deal with the trauma. And then when our family was kind of through that and we were no longer facing that issue anymore, it wasn't so painful, then we kind of went back to doing things the way we had for a while. So it does help to do something different for a while. It's kind of because the memories are so attached to the way you do things. I do agree with that.
Now, with family traditions, what are some things other than food that are really important for helping kids feel, as you said, secure so that they know this is this time of year? I know, especially for younger children, it's important when they can't read calendars yet to be able to mark the passage of time so that they have a sense of structure in their lives. So, what are some of the other examples? We're looking at the holidays in this time of year, but there could be other times of the year when we have some traditions that are important.
Well, we had one tradition that we did whenever the kids had a birthday. We always had a family birthday party with a cake and so on. And we would cook whatever the child wanted. But after we had all eaten, then we would go around the table and we would talk about what that person had done in the past year that was particularly special to us. And it was supposed to be a positive thing, kind of a thank you. We appreciate you. And it's really neat how those particular moments were very, very special because the kids would talk about things that we would have forgotten about or did not realize the significance of. You can be guaranteed at least one time a year that your parents are going to brag on you, and so would your brothers and sisters. It was a very special tradition.
So, some of our family traditions can be spiritually or even emotionally fulfilling as well. Can you talk about faith centered family traditions and why those are important for kids?
Yeah, we had faith-centered traditions. One of the things that we did was when we would put the kids to bed, we would read them a story and then my husband would pray with them. The first thing he would do is he would ask God to forgive his sins. And then he would go on and talk about the different kids and so on. But and then after a while, he began to let them do the praying. And I remember there was one child in particular that when we laughed about it, she would say, "Oh God, please forgive Daddy for all of his sins, for all of his sins, for all of his sins." And we were going, well, she got that message. But that was kind of how we put them to bed. And we went to church every Sunday and had dinner together after church. So those were some traditions that were very special to our family.
So, a family tradition by definition is how would you define that?
Something that you do on a regular basis where the kids can depend on that. Another one we had that was a spiritual one was my husband had what he called kids Bible study, and he had written a curriculum that a church used for Sunday school. And so he used those lessons, and every lesson had a Bible verse. So I would make sure they knew the Bible verse, and then he would do the lesson and they would say the Bible verse. And if they did, he would give them some sort of gift, whether it was a 50-cent piece or something. But they all look forward to the kids' Bible study because he always made it really, really fun. So that was another tradition.
Should your family traditions have some sort of play or fun or enjoyment involved in them? Or do some of them have to be kind of solemn?
You know, if it comes to maybe a death in the family, that might be a solemn occasion. But even in death, I think that you can always think of something the person did that was funny or a situation that happened that was kind of fun. They don't all have to be happy, but most of them we enjoyed doing it with the kids and they wanted it. If we changed anything, they would be a little bit upset. For a while there, we actually went down to Jekyll Island for vacations with the kids. We'd rent a house, and that kind of became a tradition. And while we were down there, Jekyll Island is really, really flat. So we'd ride bicycles all over the island. And that kind of became a tradition, which I always look back on it and remember it and with fondness because I was in the front and the kids were all behind me. And then Ray was at the end with the last youngest child. So that was really, really fun. And we all enjoyed it. And we would take picnics from parts of the island and sit down and eat together. And we really have good memories of that. But everybody looked forward to doing that.
I love how those descriptions of family traditions show that you're connecting and bonding through play, through doing things that you do every year. It just draws you closer. I know also that people who are listening and watching may want to stay closer and connected with you. So, can you list your links on how people can get your books, listen to your radio show and podcast, or get connected with you on your site?
Well, my YouTube channel is Cynthia L. Simmons Ministries, and my website is clsimmons.com. The L in my name is for my father. I was named after my father, who was C.L. Thomas, and so I am Cynthia Lynn Simmons. So in his memory, I use my middle initials, Cynthia L. Simmons. So if you go to clsimmons.com or Cynthia L. Simmons Ministries, you can find me.
I hope that all of you listening were informed and inspired about family traditions for your own gatherings this year and beyond. And of course, I also hope that you will come back for the next episode of Flourishment.